Hi-ho, Andrew, aka Calphier here. Welcome to the Onion Buns and welcome to the Sunday video game. We're doing The Witcher, my number 2 game of all time. Hey all, just a quick mention here. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment on videos you like. It helps with the YouTube algorithm, which helps me. Takes 2 seconds. So thanks in advance. So this game, it might be the biggest surprise that I ever encountered. So I picked it up on Steam after it released. I didn't pre-order it. I'd never even heard of it because at that time, the Witcher books were not written in English. They had never been translated into English. So I saw it on Steam for sale. I picked it up and I was absolutely blown away by it. Just godsmacked by it. As I've said in numerous videos now, I love story. You give me strong story and you have a fan. And The Witcher had an amazing story. It had political intrigue. It had racism. Now, it's funny. I ran a Fallout tabletop game. And my players, or some of my players, I shouldn't say all of them, but some of them complained about racism, how it was horrible. And I couldn't relate because in the real world, racism is a disgusting thing. Absolutely disgusting. I have absolutely no time for racist people. None whatsoever. But as a story plot for a fantasy setting or even a sci-fi setting, it is a fantastic tool to advance your story. Because again, people, this isn't real. This is fantasy, or it's science fiction, or it's fiction. So I absolutely loved The Witcher because what the humans were doing to the elves was disgusting, and how the elves were reacting was predictable and disgusting as well, but it made for drama, intrigue, angst. It was gritty. It wasn't whitewashing everything like every single character has redeemable quality. No, there is bad people in the world. Even in the real world, there is bad, disgusting people in the world. And in my way of thinking, those are the people or the characters that we should want to punish, defeat. Like these are evil people, and the worse they are, the more we should want to punish and defeat them. So I don't understand this modern day concept of every villain has to have redeemable qualities, and you can't push racism or sexism as a plot point. You can. It depends on how you push them. If you are pushing racism as being bad and disgusting, then that is a perfectly valid plot point, in my opinion. So I don't understand modern day players that get upset about that. The Witcher did not pull punches. It went to the nitty gritty. It went to the heart of this. And because of that, it set up such an amazing story and setting and environment. And it was an environment you had to traverse, you had to maneuver around. And it wasn't just, here's your villain and here's your good guy. It's like, well, here's the Order of the Rose. Some people view them as the good guys, but I kind of thought they were kind of slimy, honestly. And then you got these ones over here, and well, they were slimy. So I loved The Witcher. Absolutely loved it. That's why it's my number 2 game of all time, because it didn't pander to anyone. There was no, for lack of a better word, virtue signaling or emotional manipulation or pandering. It was a gritty, somewhat realistic version of medieval Europe. I mean, medieval Europe was not a nice place, contrary to the some of the fairy tales you read about. It was dirty. It was harsh. People did not have a long lifespan. There was poverty everywhere. There was corruption everywhere. And the Witcher embraced all this and brought it into their world. And then they set up Geralt, who is your very definition of an anti-hero. He is the reluctant hero. He is doing good deeds, and he is hated by the general population for it because he's a mutant, and they hate him for it. He can save the world 100 times over, and they hate him for it. And this builds story. This builds context, textures. I can't say it any other way. The Witcher is based off of the books by Andrzej Sapkowski. Now, full transparency, I frickin' hate Sapkowski. I love his books. Make no mistake about it. I have them all on my bookshelf. I'm not going to go grab them because they're like that. They're not like The Wheel of Time where I have to show you how thick these things are. But I love his writing. I love his characters. I just think he's a piece of shit as a person, but unfortunately, sometimes the biggest pieces of shit are some of the most creative people out there. And that happened to be the case with Andrzej Sapkowski. So, I'll never say a good word about him, but about his books and his characters, I absolutely love the world he created. And I had never read one of his books. It was, like I said, when I got The Witcher, I fell in love with it, and I played it, and I played it, and I played it. And I'm like, oh, these are off of a book. Well, I want to read these books. So I went looking, and it's like, there's no English translations. So I went online, and I searched, and eventually I found some fan translations online that I downloaded. So I read Blood of the Elves, I think it was called. I'd have to look at the title, but I read that book as a fan translation. And then The Witcher 2 came out, and there was all that big push with The Witcher 2, and that actually spurred on the translating of his books. So I bought the whole library, and I have read them now in English. But at the start, the fan translation was the best I could do. So like this, I love his writing. Okay, so before we get any further, I just want to say something here. I frickin' hate the TV show. I despise it. Not as much as I despised Wheel of Time. Like, Wheel of Time was an absolute travesty. Rings of Power, the Tales of Galadriel are an absolute travesty. The Witcher season 1 was at least passable. But then it went down that same rabbit hole that Wheel of Time went down, that Rings of Power went down. We don't want to tell the book's story. We want to tell our own stories. So it was just hack writers latching onto an IP so that they could get a product made, and then they changed the product completely so it doesn't even resemble the books. It really doesn't. And I gained so much respect for Henry Cavill when he walked off and told them where to shove it, because they refused to follow the books. Now, some of my friends like to call me a traditionalist, and that's fine. Whatever. I believe if you are going to do a product of somebody else's IP, then you follow, you honor, and you respect their product. If you are not willing to do that, then you should not be making that product, that adaptation. And okay, I'm going to stop on that because I can go on a whole big rant, and I kind of did on a recent video, A Wheel of Time, where I celebrated it being canceled. But just honor the product. What CD Projekt Red did, however, they were smart. They were very smart. They got the rights to these books. Apparently, I didn't know this. I was researching for this video. This was actually started by a company called Metropolis Software. CD Projekt Red bought them in 2009 and closed them in 2010, but they had obtained a license from Andrzej Sapkowski for his novels in the Witcher series around 1997. However, due to several projects the studio was involved in at the time and concerns from the publisher Topware about the material's international appeal, it had none because it had never been translated out of Polish. The product never got further than some initial media and playability level. So CD Projekt Red got it from them and they ran with the ball. But as I was saying, what CD Projekt Red did was brilliant. They didn't try to adapt the novels. I'm assuming they realized that by trying to adapt the novels, they were going to run into the same old rabbit hole problem of, you cannot make the book fans fully happy. Now, I'm going to qualify that. Look at Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones did not do an page-by-page adaptation, which is what the fenders of all these garbage adaptations always grab to. Oh, you can't do it page. Game of Thrones didn't do a page-by-page. But until they ran out of source material, they did a fantastic adaptation that honored, followed, and respected the source material with the visualization that they would have to cut stuff for time constraints. And they did. But the book fans didn't mind because they were still seeing the product they love. Same with Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. He did not follow it page for page. But what he put out honored, respected, and mostly followed the source material. So this BS line of you can't do page by page, that's nonsense that low information people throw out to defend really shitty viewpoints. So what CD Projekt Red did, though, is they didn't try to adapt the books. What they did was they started The Witcher after the last book. So there was no source material. There was this source material that set up the story, the environment, the characters, but it stopped here and they went this way. And they honored all of this. This is a big difference. It's like you look at Game of Thrones again. When they ran out of source material, the writing went down the shitter. It really did for those final few seasons. It was absolute crap. I don't care what anyone says. That final season was an absolute atrocious monstrosity. But they weren't very good writers. And we saw that. They were excellent adaptations. Like, you want to do an adaptation, hire those two David guys. But you want original writing after the fact, don't hire them. They can't do it. CD Projekt Red, however, they did it. They took all of this. They respected it. They followed the vision of it. And then they wrote their story this way. So nobody could complain that they weren't following the source material. And every book fan out there that I am aware of that played these games said, I love how they treated the material. And that's all book fans want. It really is. They just want you to treat the material with respect. It's not too much of an ask. It really isn't. So I'd never read the books, but I loved what The Witcher did. And then when I read the books, I loved it even more because I'm reading the books and I'm going, my God, they nailed it. They nailed it. This is what the Scoia'tael is like. This is what the Fellowship of the Rose is like. This is what Shani is like. This is what Triss is like. In The Witcher 1, you only hear mention of Yennefer. You don't actually meet her, so you really couldn't say they captured Yennefer. You never actually met Yennefer until The Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt. So, they just mentioned it. It was Shani. It was Triss. It was Geralt. It was Dandelion. Volton. So it was all the classic characters, but they were represented properly. And the visual of the game, even in that era, was spectacular. The amazing thing about The Witcher 1 that I don't think a lot of people understand is CD Projekt Red licensed the Neverwinter Night. So you look at The Witcher 1 and you look at Neverwinter Nights, and I loved Neverwinter Nights for what it was, but oh my God, did they get so much more out of that engine? With The Witcher 1. Now, nowadays it looks really, really, really dated. Like, massively dated. But back then it was like, holy crap, did they get a lot out of this pre-existing engine? Which just speaks wonders to the developers at CD Projekt Red at the time. Like, these were master designers. There's no other way to put it. So, The Witcher 1 is my number 2 game of all time. It's got everything in it that you could want from an RPG. And the reason it stands higher than number 2 and number 3 for me, and I love number 2 and 3, they're in my top 20 list. But The Witcher 1, now as I've said before, I don't play games on hard mode. I don't find them fun. Okay? I don't see the appeal to hard mode or hardcore or all that. I play games at the normal level. But The Witcher 1, what they managed to do is every enemy you face has a weakness, and you have to figure out what that weakness is. Now, The Witcher 3, I went through from, no word of a lie, I went from start to finish, excluding bosses, but start to finish, all I did was push fast attack, and I killed everything, excluding bosses. You can't do that in The Witcher 1. You have to figure out, well, the bandits, you have to learn how to jump over them and get attacked from behind and stun. Other things are, you have to use your flame hex or your other hexes. That was the other thing about The Witcher 1, is you really had to incorporate the signals, weaponry, silver and steel, and potions. Like, in The Witcher 3, I barely used any potions other than maybe some cat's eye and one other one. I can't think of what it was on right now for the night hags. But other than that, I really didn't use any alchemy. In The Witcher 1, I was constantly using alchemy. Constantly, because you had to. And that made it feel challenging. Like I said, I love The Witcher 2. I love The Witcher 3. But neither of them challenged me like The Witcher 1 did. And I loved that about The Witcher 1 because I wasn't playing on hardcore mode. I was playing on normal, and I was being challenged on normal. And that's what every game, in my opinion, should strive for. Normal should not be an easy mode game. Normal should challenge you. All right, I want to show you definitely at its time, it was put out in 2009. But definitely at its time, it was probably the best cinematic trailer I'd ever seen in a video game. Now, definitely games after then have blown this away, but it still stands up to us. It still stands up to a certain degree. And what's amazing is it tells the story from a book. Like, this is actually out of the book. So let's sit back and enjoy this. It's 7 minutes long, but I guarantee you will not be disappointed you sat back and watched it.
His name was Geralt of Rivia. He was a witcher, a professional monster slayer. An unusual contract to lift the curse that held a monarch's daughter. It was enough to spend the night with the princess, dusk till dawn. If only she were not a deadly beast, a striga. The traitor responsible for the curse became the bait. onward, the Witcher lifted the curse and gained fame. The world changed with the coming of the Great War, the time of the sword and axe, the time of disdain. Geralt of Rivia disappeared, all but forgotten. But that's another story.
Now, let me be honest. If CD Projekt Red ever put out a Witcher TV series using that animation, I'd watch it. I would be glued to, as long as the storytelling respected the source material, and I would be there. I watched the first 2 seasons of The Witcher on TV, and I shut it off, and I won't watch the rest of it. It's garbage, you know. And as I said, Henry Cavill walked off the set because they flat out refused. They told him, and they've said many times in the interviews, we have no desire to follow the source material. Many of the writers have flat out said they hate the source material. And it's like, what the hell are they writing for? So yeah, you give me that and I'll watch that TV show. But that is the cinematic trailer that brought in The Witcher enhanced director's cut. And I mean, that cinematic sets the entire tone for the game. It really does. If you've never played it and you're not a graphics hog, I'm being polite, that you need the AAA graphics of modern era, then you should play this game, because this game is an absolute masterpiece and your choices matter. It's got replayability because your choices matter. So anyway, my number 2 game of all time is The Witcher #1, the very first one. It wasn't a huge selling success, so it was successful enough to promote the second one, but it wasn't a huge success because North America didn't know about it, really. The Witcher up to that point was basically a Polish region-only cult following at best. You know, it didn't have the worldwide recognition that it has now, but this was the start. And I really can't say enough good things about it. You know, I keep hearing they're going to remake it. And part of me is like, okay, I would love to see them remake it with modern day graphics like even The Witcher 3 had. But I'm terrified that we won't get the storytelling that we got in this game. That we will get developers who think they know better, that they're more creative, that they need to change things to put their stamp on it. And it's like, honestly, if they can't do it properly, I'd prefer they don't do it at all. I would love a remake if it's done properly. But if they can't do it properly, I'd prefer they just don't do it at all. And anyway, that is my number 2 game of all time. I highly suggest anyone who's not played this, give it a try. It's one of the great RPGs of our time. It really is. And yeah, so that's my video for this week. If you like this video, please leave a like, a subscribe, and a share. I'm trying to grow my channel. A like, a subscribe, and a share does me wonders, and I do appreciate those people that do like, subscribe, and share. I always leave a comment. I encourage people to leave a comment. It helps with the interaction between us, and it helps with the YouTube algorithm promoting my videos to outside sources. Simple as that. So anyway, as always, pew 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 and shit. Thanks for watching. Bye.